When you're trying to improve your skills in the kitchen, it's vital to build up an arsenal of tools for success. Now, we all start off with some basic equipment to get the job done, but I am here to tell you that you are due for an upgrade. So in today's video, I'm gonna be going over 5 of the most standard kitchen tools and what I think are 5 much more efficient options for the pro home cook. Let's start with cleaning, which in my mind is one of the most underrated aspects of cooking because half of preparing a meal is actually just cleaning up the mess. And growing up in my house, the #1 tool of cleaning up a mess was the old paper towel. I'm talking going to Costco, buying 24 packs, probably going through 1 or 2 of these a day, which is not just incredibly wasteful, but also incredibly inefficient. Which brings me to probably my most used pro tool of all time, the dish towel. Now, if I had to guess, I would say when it comes to home cooking, 90% of the time people are using paper towels, 10% of the time they're using dish towels. My goal right now is to reverse that ratio. There's so many reasons why I'm choosing a dish towel over a paper towel when it comes to cleaning up a mess in the kitchen. #1 is they're just not gonna quit on you. They're virtually indestructible and they're extremely absorbent, which makes them the most ideal tool for cleaning up your general mess in the kitchen. #2 is that they are a wearable item, which is so important. You might see me with the dish towel over the arm. Maybe you have an apron with a little dish towel holder on it, or you just tuck it in your pocket. That's something you can't do with a paper towel, and you want that dish towel basically connected to your body because you're gonna be using it all the time. And another big concern in the kitchen is protecting yourself from heat while you're cooking. And although a dish towel is not an oven mitt, it can certainly act as heat protection in the moment. So maybe you're boiling some water and the handles are a little hot and you've got 2 dish towels to transfer it over to the sink, or you're pulling a hot pan out of the oven, or maybe you just want to use it as a protector for one of your surfaces in the kitchen. And just a reminder that not all dish towels are created equal, so make sure if you are using it as heat protection, you're folding it over itself a bunch of times to increase the protection. And speaking of material, #4, dish towels come in all different styles. My favorite is going to be just a nice heavy duty quilted cotton, just like this. I try to stay away from the microfiber cloths. I don't really like the texture of those, the feeling. And when it comes to sizing, there's obviously all different shapes and sizes. Something in this 15 to 25 inch rectangular form is gonna be the most ideal and all purpose. And #5, which is probably the most important reason to start shifting your paper towel use over to dish towels, is that they're reusable. So what I like to do is invest in a few packs of dish towels. Say you've got 15 of them. What you can do over the course of a week is use them in your kitchen to clean up all your mess and build up your dirty supply, so then you can just transfer everything over to 1 load of laundry, clean your dish towels, dry them, and then boom, you've got a week's supply of these bad boys. Now, of course, paper towels aren't all bad. They certainly have a purpose in the kitchen. If you've got a nasty mess, which happens from time to time, and you need to actually dispose of it for good, a paper towel is probably gonna be the best option for that. Or if you've got some meat or a piece of fish and you need to pat that dry, well, we don't want any meat juice in the laundry machine, so a paper towel is gonna be the best tool for that. So it's not about getting rid of this roll entirely, it's about shifting those ratios. We want 10% here, 90% here, which I know for me definitely took me time to kind of shift into that mindset, but now it's like I buy a few paper towel rolls for the entire month and I'm really just reliant on these bad boys. They will change your cleaning life in the kitchen. Now, dish towels are gonna be the key tool to keeping your kitchen clean, but when it comes to cooking, there is no more important tool than your knife, and keeping it sharp is going to be essential. So as you can see here, I've got a nice collection of knives. I'm obsessed with different styles of knives depending on what I'm cooking or how I feel in the kitchen. And I can tell you from experience, no matter how cheap or expensive your knife is, at some point, that knife will get dull. And if you're like me, you want to be self-reliant so you don't have to go to the store or send your knives away every time they need to be sharpened. And the standard home cooking remedy is something like this. This is a handheld sharpener, but we can do much better. So technically one of these pull-through sharpeners will get the job done, but in my opinion, there are a few disadvantages. #1 is there's very little control of the actual angle of your edge. And each of your knives, depending on the style, will have a different degree degree of angle of the actual edge. So even though this one is a little fancier and it has 2 different settings, it's still pretty much the training wheels of knife sharpening. Number 2 is when you're actually pulling through the knife on these types of sharpeners, they don't provide any protection from the friction of that motion, which can make things a bit awkward when you're sharpening your knife, and even more of a letdown can lead to some gaps or some little chips in your blade, which is a huge bummer when you've invested money in your knives. And finally, number 3, when I used to use these pull-through sharpeners, I just didn't feel like I was legit as a home cook. Like I was just pulling a knife through and hoping for the best, but it didn't feel like a proper way to actually sharpen your knife, which brings me to the much more superior knife sharpening method, the whetstone. Now I'm not gonna lie, these things used to scare the hell out of me. The training wheels are officially off, and to use a whetstone properly, you've gotta learn a new skill. That's gonna take a little time, it's gonna take a little patience, but I can say, once you do learn, and you will, anyone can learn this skill, you will now know how to properly sharpen your knife for life. Now, the first reason why a whetstone is gonna be the more superior knife sharpening tool is, like I mentioned before, every knife is unique, and your whetstone is gonna offer the most control and refinement of your edge. So whether you're using a single-sided Japanese blade or a double-sided German blade, you're covered no matter what the degree of the edge is or the style of your knife is. So there's a few different options when you're buying whetstones. The simplest version is something you can find all over Amazon, which is basically one stone that has a different grit or roughness on each side. It sits in a nice little holder that will give you some stability on your table, and that's a great place to start. But depending on how far you want to take it, you can also buy individual stones with different grits. So the first thing you're going to do when you're using your whetstone is soak it. That's why it's called a whetstone. And you're going to want to do this for at least a few hours, or you can leave it overnight. So that stone really absorbs all the water and stays lubricated through that sharpening process. So always going to start with a lower grit, around 1,000, which is going to work to really strip away metal so you can actually refine the edge. And this motion of sharpening and getting that right angle can definitely be intimidating at first, but I'm telling you, it's just about getting in there, practicing, really learning that muscle memory, and continuing to build this skill over time. I certainly was not great at this the first few times I did it, and then one day it clicks. Like, okay, I can sharpen a knife with a whetstone. But one thing you can do to see if you properly sharpen your knife is to check for something that's called a burr, which is basically a buildup of metal at the top of your edge. So if you just gently graze your finger on the top of your edge, you should feel and hear a little bit of roughness right at the edge of your knife. And when that burr is present, that's when you know you can move on to the refining stage. You can switch to your higher grit whetstone somewhere around 6,000, which is really there to polish it up and get rid of any last imperfections of your edge. Now, the last thing I'll mention is one of these, a honing steel. A lot of people think that these are actually knife sharpeners, but really the purpose of a honing steel is just to maintain your edge. So this is actually a sharpener. This is maintenance. Both of these together are the keys to becoming self-sufficient with sharpening in the kitchen. So take your time, be careful of course, and soon enough you will be a pro at sharpening. So if you've been following along with the channel over the last few months, you've seen some pretty big changes with the kitchen, and we're pretty much done with renovations at this point, which means it's time to replenish the pantry. And when I'm looking to stock up on pantry goods, I always call on today's sponsor, Thrive Market. Thrive Market is an online membership-based grocery store on a mission to make healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. Just like investing in high-quality tools, I think it's super important to invest in high-quality ingredients. And with Thrive, I can count on all their products being outstanding. Whether you're looking for awesome pantry items, snacks, eco-friendly cleaning supplies, or maybe you're shopping for a certain dietary preference like keto or gluten-free, Thrive has something for everyone's needs. I'm personally a big fan of Thrive's own branded products. They're always reliable and top tier in terms of quality, and they're super affordable, but it's nice that Thrive also offers some of the best organic grocery brands in the game. So if you're interested in signing up for Thrive Market, click the link below in my description or go to thrivemarket.com/ProHomeCooks for 30% off your first order and a free gift worth up to $50. Now back to some tools. So the box grater was probably the first kitchen tool I ever used in my a super expansive high school culinary career. Freshman year, home ec class, probably making some type of potato pancake, and really for years after that, completely naive to the idea that there was any other way to grate something in the kitchen. Now, it wasn't until years later when I was watching some food TV, I believe it was Tyler Florence, and I saw him using the microplane. And just his ability to be portable with his grating in the kitchen and to grate something directly into a dish in the moment was somewhat of a revelation to me at the time. Now, don't get me wrong, a box grater of course has its purpose, which is generally to do that heavy prep load of grating. But taking one look at this thing, you just know it's awkward. You can't just take this on the fly and hover over a pan and grate something in. As a home cook, a lot of our meals are coming together very quickly, and we don't always have the time to prep everything out beforehand. So having a grater that you can just bring around with you and just grate things directly into a pan or a bowl is just going to be a much more efficient option. So for me, the microplane is the optimal grating utensil, and here are a few reasons why. Now, although these are commonly used for zesting, I find that I'm using this in the kitchen every day to grate all types of things. One of the biggest uses is definitely grating hard cheeses. So if I've made a pasta and I need to finish it off with some Parmesan, boom, take the microplane over to the pot, grate in that Parmesan, and since it's so fine, it just instantly melts in and creates a beautiful sauce. Also, you can grate hard spices with it. So a lot of times, if say I'm cooking an oatmeal, take a little bit of nutmeg, grate that up on the microplane, and that fresh grated nutmeg is gonna be so much more potent than the pre-dried stuff you get at the supermarket. Something that's always going into recipes are aromatics, and rather than pulling out the blender or having to sit there and mince something up super fine, the most efficient way to get that aromatic flavor into your dish is just to take out your microplane, and whether it's some garlic, some ginger, or even a chili, just give it a grate and you've got an instant mince or puree of flavor right into your dish. And like I said, probably the most common use, of course, is zesting citrus. Having the microplane around, I find rather than just using the juice, I am taking advantage of that citrus so much more, bringing another level of citrus essence to your dish. So there's two different main versions of the microplane. You've got the skinnier long one and then this wider one with a little more surface area. I've personally found over the years that this right here, the wide one with the cheese grater setting, having the wider surface area and this sort of smaller to medium grater setting is by far the most all-purpose. So if you can only buy one that's really going to change the game for you, it's this right here. Let's talk about food storage for a second. Now, everyone's got a box of Ziploc bags. It's pretty much become the standard of food storage for ages now. But as technology advances, well, we get more options. Yes, this right here is a vacuum sealer. Now, I love the idea of vacuum sealers. These obviously work great for chefs and restaurants, but I always struggled to make this an everyday appliance that I use. That was until I found this little guy by Zwilling, a little portable mini vacuum sealer that you can just slip into the drawer, you whip it out. It's got these special bags with a valve, pop that right in, and instant vacuum sealing without any hassle. Now, Ziploc bags are still great, especially for things that can't be vacuum sealed, that are a little more delicate, like a lettuce or a fluffy piece of sourdough bread. But there is one major disadvantage to the Ziploc, which is oxidation. The number one threat to your fresh produce is oxygen. That is the one thing that will break them down quicker than anything. So the more amount of oxygen, the quicker your produce is gonna go bad. So I find that vacuum sealing my veggies, especially after I've sliced something in half and exposed it to more oxygen, if I can get that vacuum sealed and in the fridge, it will extend the shelf life or the refrigerator life of your veggies by at least double. And this has completely changed the way that I store my food. Now, when it comes to vacuum sealing, you can get very locked into the idea of just storing fresh things, but of course, dried or pantry goods, they're still gonna oxidate as well. So vacuum sealing them is going to extend the shelf life. It just keeps it so fresh for so much longer. Of course, meat and fish, if you're freezing them long-term, vacuum sealing is a great option. And then of course, you're opening yourself up to the world of sous vide cooking. There's definitely an investment involved in this technology, but keeping things this fresh for this much longer will pay off in just a matter of months. When you're thinking about straining liquids, for most of you, I'm sure this is what comes to mind, just a classic pasta strainer. A workhorse in the kitchen, I grew up using this, but just like the box grater, it's a bit bulky and there's a much more portable and versatile option. And that upgraded tool is this thing right here, which goes by a few names. Some people call it a skimmer or a mesh strainer. I like to call it a spider. When it comes to a traditional pasta strainer, it really has one function, which is straining off large amounts of liquid into the sink. With one of these spiders, you instantly obtain portability with a variety of uses. Rather than taking a bulky, heavy pot over to the sink to strain out your pasta water and lose most of it, you can just scoop in your spider, take the noodles to the pot next door, and retain all that pasta water and use it as you need. And one of my favorite uses for these spiders is blanching vegetables, which can be a very quick process. So if I have a super delicate veggie, I can just dip it in the hot water for a few seconds, keep it in that spider, and then right to the ice bath. And you can totally handle bigger items like these potatoes right here, or say I'm boiling some eggs. I love the control you get with a spider because you can stack on those eggs and just gently lay them into the pan rather than just plopping them in the water and hoping for the best. And of course, for deep frying at home, since we don't have a professional deep fryer setup, these spiders are gonna be the best option because you can pluck out any piece of food you want safely and all of that residual oil will drain off right back into your pot. Now, these do come in a few shapes and sizes and materials. You've got the wood handle versus the stainless steel, which are both great options that I've used in the past, but I do find that the stainless steel is great because these things do get dirty. So being able to throw this in the dishwasher is a huge bonus. So again, this is what I grew up on. For many years, this was the only way I thought you could strain liquids. That is until this baby entered into my tools arsenal. And I am telling you, I use this multiple times a day in the kitchen because there's just so many uses. It's so versatile. And of course, it's just super portable. So those are 5 of my favorite kitchen tool upgrades. And remember, it's not about going out and getting everything all at once. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But this is about figuring out what can be upgraded because as you start evolving as a cook, you need those tools to really support and back up that journey. So hopefully you learned something valuable and I'll see you in the next video.